Hey everyone, welcome back to the Layback Podcast. Joining us today is Josh Willitts, graduate student, right-handed pitcher at the University of Richmond. And our special bond is we are 2022 Coastal Plain League champions with the Savannah Bananas back when it was a college summer team. It was really fun to follow Josh that summer, train with him a little bit, and then caught the injury bug a little bit. Missed a couple years of college ball, but he's been back on the bump now, hitting all-time PR this year in the mid 90s, and we're really excited for what's to come and really to see this season finish out strong for the Richmond Spiders. But Josh, thanks a ton for coming on. Looking forward to getting into the story today.
Happy to do it.
Heck yeah. All right. So basic start here. I'd love if you could just tell everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're from. On the visual side, we got the Jalen Hurts poster behind you. I can't quite tell which Philly that is over your left shoulder.
Got Chase Utley there.
Okay. All right. So sliding dirty into second base, or is that just hard-nosed baseball?
It's hard-nosed baseball,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
I'm
Like
not
a
that
true
guy.
South Jersey guy, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, take us through the initial jump into baseball and maybe even how you ended up at Richmond.
Well, I'm from South Jersey, like we just went over. So big Philly guy, even though I'm not from Philly. Got into baseball, kind of started taking it more seriously, I guess, like my freshman year. I was like 70, mid 70s kind of guy as a freshman. So I was like very, very average. And then I started taking training very seriously, started putting on some weight. So like as a freshman, I was like 6 foot 125, something like that. So I was like, yeah. And then I started getting in the weight room like 4 or 5 times a week, started putting on a lot of weight. So I went from that to my sophomore year, I probably put on like 30 pounds, got up to like low 80s ish, maybe up to like 85, something like that, but still like no college looks as a sophomore at all, like very much a late bloomer. And then finally my junior year, I got up to like 200 pounds. So I put on like 80 pounds ish, 75 pounds over the course of 2 years, like grinded in the weight room, and then got up to like 90, 91 as a junior. So just no, I didn't like change my mechanics or anything, just kind of grinded in the weight room, took the physicality of things very seriously. And then that's when I started finally getting some college looks like my junior summer going into my senior year, which was interesting. Like, I don't know, I feel like that's pretty late nowadays for looking into college. But I was looking at like just academic schools out of high school. That's kind of where my head was at because I wasn't getting like cool Power Five looks. So I was thinking like I might as well go somewhere that's good academics. So I was looking at like a lot of Patriot League schools, a lot of A10 schools, but Richmond just it's awesome. Like if you visit Richmond, it's like the nicest campus ever and like a super cool area. Like the facilities are awesome and the coaches here are awesome too. It's just like such a perfect situation. So I ended up choosing Richmond. So yeah, that's kind of how I got there, but it's kind of an interesting road to get there.
Backing it up just a bit, were you a two-way player for your high school team, multi-sport athlete? I mean, I've run some sprints with you. You can fly a little bit. You're pretty athletic.
And actually, as a sophomore, I didn't really get college looks, like I said, but I was only throwing like 82, but I was swinging it pretty well. So like some of the college interest that I did get was actually as a hitter, and I got no looks as a pitcher at all. So that was pretty interesting. I love pitching, don't get me wrong, but I kind of wish I pursued hitting a little bit more. I love that as well. And then I was also playing basketball and football in high school. So I was a three-sport guy. Once I committed to Richmond, I quit basketball and football because I didn't want to get hurt my senior year going into college, which kind of sucked too because my senior year was COVID year. So I didn't even get to play baseball my senior year. But the basketball and football season still happened. So I was like, man, I kind of like wish I just did that because that would have been my only shot to play a senior year sports. But I don't know. I guess it was a good decision. I saw like one of my
2020
best
hindsight.
friends like tear his ACL playing football in the fall, and I was like, yeah, I can't do that. So I ended up just quitting. But yeah, three-sport guy, two-way guy, but I struck out too much. So I guess once I saw above 85, I was lost at the plate. So.
How long did you think you were going to be the next Mike Trout, though?
Oh yeah, up until like probably my junior year. That's when guys actually started throwing hard, and I was like, "Oh, I'm cooked." This level, like 86 and a slider, no shot. But when I was like a sophomore, I was like, oh, like Trout.
Yeah, I'm the man.
Yeah.
Was there any point during the early years at Richmond where you tried to say like, Coach, if you need a pinch hitter, I might be your guy. If you need a center
Yeah.
fielder, could be me.
Yeah. I mean, I still say that, honestly. But the pitcher's BP, I'll just go crazy and be like, yeah, if
Got
you
some
need
swing
some run,
speed.
win a game, right? Got some pop still.
That's right.
But as a freshman, I'm not actually annoyed, but my like senior year of high school or whatever, I was swinging it all right. And like the little summer league things when, the season got canceled and everything. And I went in the fall, and of course, the coaches are always like, "Yeah, you can two-way if you want to. Like, you can try it out." So I was like, as a high schooler, I was like, "Oh, they definitely mean that." In reality, I feel like they just tell that to everybody. Like, I got to campus thinking I might try out the two-way, and I didn't get that opportunity.
Had
But
your bat with you.
yeah,
Sure, first day at the field.
never know. And they're like, "No, we're just gonna use you as a pitcher." I was like, "Yeah, figures."
Makes sense. So what was that then first year of baseball like at Richmond? The big transition from high school ball in Jersey up to D1 baseball. A10 definitely has some really hidden talent. There's no
Yeah,
question about that. There's been some really quality players to come out of it. Handful of big leaguers have come out of the A10. So I'd love if you could walk us through what that
yeah.
first year looked like. Was it a tough transition, or did you really just kind of hit the ground running?
I wouldn't say like the tough part came until like the season my freshman year. My freshman fall, I came out. Part of the hard part too, I guess, was school. My freshman year, I was actually a physics major, which was very difficult. I ended up stopping that pretty early because I realized how difficult it would be. So that part was hard because I'd be like staying up until like 1 a.m. studying and then have 5 hours of sleep into a lift into trying to compete in an inter squad to earn a spot, or not earn a spot, but like earn a role. Uh,
Yeah.
so that part was pretty tough my freshman fall, but I played fine my freshman fall. I was hitting like velo PRs. Like in high school, I think my velo PR was like 91, and then I came out my freshman fall, I was up to like 94, and like
Whoa.
was playing really really well. Like I thought I had earned a pretty solid spot on the team going into the spring. So like the fall was actually baseball wise, thought it would be pretty easy. Honestly, I mean I feel like a lot of freshmen are like that too, where they had way too much confidence. Or like, oh yeah, you're the man from high school, so you go in and think you're gonna dominate. And then my fall actually did really well, so I was like, oh, this is not that hard. I guess the only tough part was like in high school, especially South Jersey, like you'll face like a couple teams here and there that are like insanely good, but for the most part, if you throw like 90, you're probably never gonna get hit hard. And then there's a couple outings my freshman fall where I was like I said, like throwing pretty hard, throwing harder than I ever had before, and I was still giving up like hits. I gave up like a home run or gave up 3 hits in an inning. I was like, damn, like how am I giving up hits right now? So that part was interesting too, knowing like you can't just blow up by guys even if you throw pretty hard in college. But other than that, like I didn't think it was too insane to be honest. But came out then my freshman spring was a little bit more of a tougher transition because when I started walking guys a lot and I wasn't
Mhm.
throwing as hard, which was like weird to me too. Like I went from like being 92, 94 in my freshman fall to like sitting 88, 90 in the spring. So I was like a little flustered from that. And then I started walking guys, so that I was flustered from that. And then I didn't pitch like the first 2 weeks of the season. And I feel like as a freshman, you don't get playing time right away. It kind of messes with your confidence a little bit. So that was difficult trying to learn how to like manage that well when you're not playing right away. You're no longer like the guy of the team. That's always, I feel like, a tough transition. But I had like great like senior captains or whatever that would honestly like talk to me from the first week and be like, I know it's tough. Like, don't feel like you're selfish for like talking to me about, or like having to rant a little bit about not playing. Like I know it's difficult. So that was very helpful. Like I had some good friends that talked me through it a lot. But once I got out there, I actually did really well at first. Like I thought I was in a really bad spot, like leading going into the season where like I said, I was super flustered from earning a spot, not throwing harder, walking guys. Like I was a little all over the place, but I started out really well the beginning of my freshman year. I like my first like 8 innings or something like that. I had not given up a run. So that was very cool. Got a lot of confidence. And then, like I said, when you get hit for the first time in college, that's kind of an eye opener too. So I did super well. Then I faced Dayton, actually, your alma mater. And they just destroyed me. And I was like, oh wow. Like I was not expecting that at all. They had this kid Marcos Pujols, you know,
Yeah.
he had a ball like the classic like first home run you give up as a freshman, like you'll never forget. He had a ball like 450, like 115, like bat flipped it to take the lead. And I was like, oh God, these kids are good, dude. 3-2 slider. Like I was like, that's a great pitch. And he just destroyed it. And I was like, oh wow. So that was like kind of my welcome to college moment, which was like halfway into the season. I mean, overall, it was like a pretty solid freshman year. I think even like I had moments my freshman year where it started to become an eye opener, but my sophomore year was like much more challenging. Like I had much more up and downs my sophomore year, which was more of like a challenging experience, I guess. Like I said, I think freshmen, I think this holds true for like a lot of people I've seen. It's like you have this like unwavering confidence out of high school because you've done so well your entire life. I think that confidence kind of propels you as a freshman. And then I see a lot of sophomores when they really start to struggle for the first time. That's when a lot of kids I've seen like kind of really go through it a little bit and have to like really work on it, stuff like that.
I think that's stated really well and probably rings true throughout all college athletics, all sports, all levels, because everybody who plays a college sport was the best player on their team or
Exactly.
one of the best couple if you're from one of those really fancy academies down in Florida or something like that. Yeah, you go from being the man and until you get humbled, why wouldn't you continue to think that anyways? And for you to be able to carry that momentum for so long, why wouldn't you think you're invincible? And
Exactly.
then ultimately, when you're in the middle of the season, if you have good teammates, you can kind of ride that high. So until you hit the real personal struggle, it's kind of hard to know what you don't know. And if success is all you know, that's freaking awesome. It's going to be really easy to feel good about yourself. But then you said your sophomore year came a few more struggles. So was it a role change? Was it things within your control or out of your control? What do you think kind of brought on these difficult times that second year of college ball?
So I think the biggest thing for me was like an expectation change. Whereas like your freshman year, I feel like it's kind of like an underdog mindset, like a little chip on your shoulder, just trying
Hmm.
to prove yourself. And then once I did have like that good freshman year, I was expecting to be like even better my sophomore year. And I was expecting to take that next step up. And like I had all these crazy goals for myself that were probably a little unrealistic. But like I mean, I don't hate the fact that I had high goals for myself, but I didn't factor in the possibility of like going through struggles a little bit. Also, like the role change was part of it too, I'm assuming. My sophomore year, my sophomore fall, I did super well. Like one of the best I've ever pitched was back up velo wise. Like we had lost some of our weekend starters. So I was like very much thought I was going to be a weekend starter. I don't know, like Friday guy, Saturday guy, whatever, but I was pitching really well and I thought I was going to be a weekend starter. But then I didn't get that right away, like entering the season. But I was still like in a very good role. So I was like, fine with it, but I still, I guess, had like a little bit of a chip on my shoulder in the beginning where I was like, oh, I didn't get the role I wanted. Oh, I started off my sophomore year really well again. First 3, 4 weeks in the season, I hadn't allowed a run again. So like still had a great start. And then they put me, I think like I started getting like a start opportunity and stuff like that. And I was kind of expecting to finally take that step up. And, I was looking really good. And then my first outing, I let up runs. It was like against Villanova. And I just like kind of stunk, like gave up a lot of runs, gave up the game. And then I think from there, like since I had such high expectation levels for myself, I was like, now I'm definitely not going to be a weekend starter. Like now I'm definitely not going to have the season I thought I was going to just because of this one bad outing. And I think that messed with my confidence so much that like my next 3, 4 outings, I was really bad. And then I stopped playing for like a little bit, went from a major high to a major low, where that was like the first time in my career where I like had continued struggles and that messed with my confidence a lot. But like Epstein was finally at Richmond, Josh Epstein. And from you knowing him, I'm sure you know he's like a very big mental side of the game guy. Like,
The biggest.
yeah, the biggest. So I'm actually like I'm super happy that he was at Richmond because that's like exactly what I needed because my stuff was pretty good at that point. I had success, but like my mental side after my first like couple really bad outings was just shot, kind of just lost all my confidence. So he introduced me to the mental game of, or the mental game of ABCs, mental pitching of ABCs, some pitching mental ABCs, something like that. So I started reading that book a lot and I kind of started turning things around, kind of trying to get my confidence back up. And then by the end of the season, I was really, really good again. But it took like a couple outings where I like, went from being like super prominent role to like now I'm pitching one inning in a not close game, or I'm like pitching one inning in a midweek. So I kind of like had to take those opportunities as they came to try to slowly get back into it. But he helped me out a lot, and the mental game of ABCs was kind of big for me in there, which is crazy. I never thought I would say that. It sounds stupid, I guess, for a lot of kids, but it helped me out a ton. So I'm really glad he helped me out through that.
How were you able to shift from a fatalistic mindset to maybe this more Zen style approach, or just letting the opportunities come to you? Because it sounds like early on, good or bad, you
Hmm.
treated everything as either 100% good or 100% bad. There was no spectrum to anything. It was just, this is the best thing to ever happen or it's the worst thing to ever happen. The black and white, yes and no, that can be very difficult. It's easy to fall into that place when you just get comfortable riding highs and then thinking your world's coming to an end. But how were you able to make that shift? Was it just the work with the book recommended by Coach Epstein, conversations, or introspection? What was that for you?
I think part of it definitely was the book. I think the book helped me out a lot, kind of shifted a lot of the mindset I had. But I think part of it too is, like we said earlier, like just getting kind of humbled a little bit. Like I think up until that point, like I really thought I was like the best pitcher ever, and like, every like time I allowed runs was like a bad game, unless it was like one run or whatever across however many innings. But if I like gave up some hits, like gave up a home run or allowed some walks, I was like, oh, I suck today. But once I kind of went through it and like just had some terrible outings, like I had some outings where I walked three guys and got pulled, or I had one outing against St. Louis where I was part of three pitchers. I gave up their all-time hits record in a single game. Like they had like 26 hits, and I gave up like nine of them across two innings. Like, once I kind of went through that and kind of went into the understanding like struggles are going to happen to me and finally accepting that, and not every outing is going to be perfect, I kind of started becoming a little more process oriented rather than result oriented. So I was like, try to get into like an analytical mindset of like, okay, what went wrong? What do I need to do better? Instead of just labeling that outing as, oh, that sucked. I can't let that happen again. I was like, okay, this is the stuff I need to do better in my next outing. A lot of it was one, just throwing strikes in general, but throwing all speed for strikes to allow myself to not get into these 2-0 fastball counts. Like that was a big thing for me. So in my next outing, if I was like able to start landing sliders in a 0-0 count or 1-0 count or something, I was like, even if I didn't do that well that outing, at least I was able to start doing that better because that's something I need to do better. So I think it was just having an understanding of, not every outing is going to be perfect. And these are things I need to work on. If I can do these things well consistently, then most likely I'll have a good outing. And it doesn't necessarily matter the outcome of this one specific outing if my process is still there.
Right. So you're able to find small victories or silver linings in everything you did, which ultimately stacks the W's as you go on and
Yeah,
makes it easier to be successful in the long run. So
exactly.
all of this is still early on in your college career. We're in your sophomore year at this point, and it's crazy to think that you've now gone through this complete mental evolution prior to you catching the injury bug. At this point at all, are you having any arm discomfort, or did that manifest later your junior year?
No, my sophomore year, like an arm injury was like a complete non-factor for me. Like I was throwing 7 days a week, long tossing three times a week, like throwing bullpens. At this point too, especially when I was struggling, I was throwing bullpens all the time, trying to figure stuff out. Like my arm never felt like my arm was great. And I felt like I took good care of myself, my body, which helped me too. But like from a workload standpoint, didn't care at all how much I was throwing every day, just because I never had arm pain before.
Yeah.
The time like I ever had arm pain was that when I was like really young. But like all throughout high school and my first years of college, my arm was never even like sore.
Probably
Felt
didn't even think about it.
no, didn't even like an injury was not even something I ever thought about. Oh, that is not something that'll happen to me. Which is
And
sounds
then
so like naive, but
which I mean, that's I think it is hard when we deal with arm injuries all the time. Generally, the people that we talk to or that use Flex Pro Grip, even if they don't currently have an injury, they probably had something prior in their life, and it's just become so commonplace for us to discuss it. But really, the world you are living in is the best place you can be.
yeah,
And like, yes, you should do things to mitigate the risk of injury or train to be the best you can. But oftentimes, the things that are going to help you with performance are also going to be the things that reduce the risk of injury. So why ever think, oh my gosh, if I make this pitch, I'm going to get hurt? That's a
right.
terrible place to live mentally and physically. Yeah, I don't fault you for that by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you should live freely mentally, not fearing injury. Otherwise, I mean, you're going to put yourself in a terrible place and live a miserable existence if you
Yeah.
constantly think like, oh, this could be the one.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But yeah, let's fast forward now maybe to when things did ultimately start to go bad. So was that the fall of your junior year, or where
No,
did
so I
you
uh I
tumble
threw like
down the
50
mountain?
innings my sophomore year, and then I threw another 25 innings in Savannah with
Yep.
you. So I threw total of like 75 innings across the spring and summer, somewhere around 75, 70, 75, something like that. So in the fall, talked to Epstein, he's like the best, like very understanding. So I kind of talked to him, was like, I feel like it'd probably be best to take some time off, like just for 75 innings. I don't know if you need to see something out of me in the fall because that's where like a lot of guys try to earn their spots and everything, coach's confidence and stuff like that. But he was very understanding, had a lot of confidence in me already, so he kind of allowed me to take some time off. And then I kind of went into a velo program, so I didn't have to pitch in like fall inter squads or anything like that. Like I said, I was throwing hard in the falls, but I was like very confused why that velo wasn't translating into the spring. So that was like the one goal I had going into my junior year was like I want to find a way to get that velo into the spring and not be peaking in the fall. So that was my goal going into my junior year. So I did that all fall. And then over winter break, at that point, I was just trying to get primed for the season. And then leading up to my junior season, my arm was like kind of killing me. I think I was like the workload management finally caught up to me. And plus, we were doing like pod systems. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like a lot of college baseball teams nowadays are trying to have pitchers go less innings but pitch more frequently. So like every 3, 5 days, something like that, depending on your role and everything. But even starters will only go like 3, 4 innings so they can pitch from a Friday to a Tuesday and then back to a Saturday and stuff like that. Just to get, I think the whole premise of it is to try to not let pitchers go 3 times through an order or something like that. So that's what I was preparing for. And then now, since I was pitching in game more frequently, like I think the workload management finally caught up to me where I was still trying to like gain velo leading up to the season where I was trying to long toss a lot, trying to pull down a lot. My midweek bullpens would still be like way too high of effort. And I think it finally caught up to me. My arm was kind of killing me going into the season. And then we opened up at Alabama, and I think they were ranked at the time very good. But I didn't do well against them, but that's not important to the story. They were very good. And the second week of the season we played Yale. And at this point, like I was a weekend starter too. So I was like pretty happy with where I was at. So it was very frustrating that I ended up getting hurt. But in that Yale game, like I went my first inning, I threw like a decent amount of pitches. And then I went out for the second inning and my elbow just like I felt like almost like a crack or something in there. Something like just 100% did not feel right. But I was like, I looked down at the bullpen. It's the second inning, no one's warming up. So I was like, that's a problem. And I'm kind of looking at our coaches to see if anyone's kind of noticing that I'm like shaking my arm and nobody's looking at me. So I'm like, I guess I'll just throw through it. Like it seems all right. Like I could throw a couple more warm up pitches. I was like, seems like it'll be good enough to go, I guess. And then I threw that inning. And then there was actually like a play at the plate where we got a guy out, like pretty big moment in the game. Or I guess for the second inning, but it was like a cool play or whatever. So I gave like a little fist bump. And then I just felt like insane amount of pain in my elbow just from like a fist pump. I was like, oh God, like that's not good. I threw in a lot of pitches that inning too. And like I said, we were doing this pause system where the starters were only going like 3 innings. So thankfully he was like, all right, you're done, whatever. We're going to the next guy anyway. So I was like, thank God, like my arm's shot. And then after the game, like I was talking to our trainer and everything, and I was like, my arm is like completely shot. Like it hurts so bad. And then she ran me through some tests and everything, and she was like, she didn't think it was my UCL. So I was like, all right, that's good. But got an MRI and I had a stress fracture in my olecranon. So it's like
Yeah.
I part of the elbow. Hence why like a fist pump would hurt. Like any extension kind of movement would really hurt. And that hurt to the point where it's like I couldn't do like a push up, or I couldn't like sprint really with my elbow. Like it hurt like that bad. But then stress fracture my junior year, then I took the recommendation was to take like 6 to 8 weeks off, like 6 to 8 week on ramp, and then you'll be good. So I was out for that season already. But at that point in time, I was like, obviously I was still upset that I was out for the year. It was only the second week of the season, but in my head, I was like, still be able to play summer ball, still get a year back. I'll be good by my senior year. I was like, that's off. Like this stinks, but it wasn't like a crazy long-term injury as far as like, at least it's not TJ. I feel like that's how pitchers are nowadays. If it's not TJ, it's fine. So that's kind of where my head was at. I was like, oh, it's not TJ. Like it could be worse. So then in the summer, I start ramping back up. And actually one of my old pitching coaches was a pitching coach in the Cape. And he like reached out to me and asked me how my arm was because he saw I didn't pitch that year. And I was like, oh, like it was a stress fracture, but I should be good in like a month, like in July or something like that. So he offered me a contract and like was supposed to go up to the Cape, and I was like super pumped up for it. Like it's the Cape, it's sick. So I started throwing bullpen, started ramping up, and I threw a bullpen at like 80% effort where I was like sitting 83, 85, and my arm just started killing me again. And I was like, oh, great. And then I kind of texted him. I almost wanted to like just try to pitch through it just because how cool of an opportunity that was. But I didn't want to hurt him, have me come all the way up to the Cape and then pitch through this injury or whatever. So I ended up getting another MRI and I had another stress fracture, same place. And I was like, that now I'm starting to get a little frustrated because I'm like, why did that happen again? And there's not like a ton of rehab to do for it, honestly. Like a stress fracture is just like your bone. So you just need to allow your bone to heal. And that's really, at least from what I was told, that was like really the only thing I could truly do is just let the bone heal. So then the second time, I think I ended up taking like 12 weeks off because the first time I took 8, the second time I was like, all right, 8 didn't do it. Let's take 12. So I was out for like from at that point, like July to like November, which was like 3, 4, I think it was like right around 4 months. Then I pitched in our last week of the fall, finally got back up, and I was throwing 100% bullpens at this point. I like actually felt pretty solid. And then pitched in the inter squad in the fall, and first like 2 batters, I felt fine. And then I knew it happened again. At this point, I knew what it felt like because I had already had a stress fracture twice. So at that point, I already knew what it felt like in the middle of the outing. I was like, oh yeah, I know it's messed up again. But I was like, this is probably my last outing for a while. So I was just like, screw it, I guess. I'll just I'll finish out this inning. Like, why not? I haven't pitched in forever. Have some fun. But got another MRI, another stress fracture. And at this point, I was like, obviously incredibly frustrated. Like 3 straight stress fractures. Like clearly something's not going right. And then I was talking to the doctor that I was originally working with. But to be honest, at this point, I just kind of wanted a second opinion because I was like, obviously, I don't know. I'd rather get a second pair of eyes on it since, this thing keeps happening. So I went to a place in Philly. He's like the Phillies surgeon, I think, or physician, something like that.
Erickson?
No, it was Sakati.
Okay, yeah.
So he's like very well known, and I guys that I knew that worked with him before who talked really highly of him. So I was like, I'll try him out. And he saw like a partial tear in my UCL, and I think he didn't really go into like detail about this, but it seemed like he even thought like you could probably pitch through the partial tear part. But since like I kept having these stress fractures, I think there's this, I'm sure but I think there's this weird thing sometimes where it's like if your UCL is not completely stable, sometimes it can result to recurring stress fractures. So that was a theory by that doctor. Is like your UCL is like not a full tear. It's not necessarily that bad of a tear, but it's like damaged enough to where your elbow is very unstable, and that's what's causing these stress fractures. And then he recommended just like getting full TJ. He was like, you've already been hurt for so long. I don't want you to go through the brace and it not work. Or I don't want you to get like a PRP shot and that not work. Even though like typically I think he was kind of implying that he might recommend like something like a PRP shot, but he was like, it's been so long, just get the full TJ, be done with it. So I took his word on that and then got full TJ. So then I was out my whole senior year and then finally came back 100% healthy like this past winter break before the season started. But then I got hurt again. So I can keep going on with that too. But like 2 weeks before the season started, I was throwing lives, was throwing well, but like my arm was starting to hurt me again. And I was like, all right. But I was like, I got TJ. Like I felt more confident. I'm like, maybe this is just like growing pains in TJ. Like a lot of guys have told me before, like your elbow's not going to always feel great. Like it's going to feel tight. It's not going to feel 100% all the time. Like, over time, it'll start getting better and better. So in my head, I was just like, oh, it's not feeling great just because that's just TJ. Like you got to fight through it a little bit. And then my last outing, I was like, my arm was just shot again. I was like trying to like throw a ball afterwards just to see if it was good or not. And it was like terrible pain. So I was like, oh, like I thought I retore my UCL again or something like that. I didn't know what happened. So got another MRI right before the season started. And it was like weird. There was like a lot of inflammation around my UCL, and they said it could have been a possible stress reaction. And I don't know, it's like the bone that your UCL attaches to. I don't know.
Okay, medial epicondyle.
Yes, that's it. I don't know the terms that well still, but yeah, they said it was a possible stress reaction there, and like recommended. I talked to my doctor in Philly, and he recommended another month off, I want to say, of throwing, and then another month of like throwing again, like rehab. And at this point, I was talking to, sorry, I kind of skipped over this part. At this point, I was talking to Dylan Newcomer a lot, who was the driveline guy. So I kind of like fully relied on him for like trying to get me back to full health. Because I just started working with him like weeks before I re-injured myself.
So over winter
Yeah.
break.
I think I started working with him like the end of the fall. When I signed up for Driveline, I didn't want to waste money, I guess, lack of better ways to put it, if I wasn't at 100% health. Part of it's obviously getting healthy, and that's part of what you're paying for, but part of it also is you want to get better. So I was like, I don't want to sign up with them if I'm like throwing 80 off the mound right now and I'm like not even close to 100% because like how much can they really do for me at that point? In hindsight, I kind of wish I worked with them sooner because Dylan was so helpful that maybe he could have prevented that from happening in the first place. But I mean, hindsight's always 2020. Yeah, I started working with them like right around winter break, right before winter break.
Okay. So calling a quick timeout and running things back. So we're gonna
Yeah,
run a
sorry,
little. No, it's all good. I didn't want to kill the flow. So calling a replay on what you experienced with the elbow, especially in the backside. So the olecranon and then maybe even the lateral side of your elbow as well. What you
Yeah,
were explaining is really common. And this is me calling kind of a quick like physiology break, I guess, just for context. There are three main structures that receive load as we're working through a throw. It is the UCL, it is the bony collision on the backside of the elbow, and it's the muscle tendon units that overlay the UCL. So,
Mhm.
what can happen if there's additional laxity on the medial elbow or the inside of the elbow, specifically at layback or as we're working through maximum external rotation? If there's more laxity, that means there's more space or more stretch on the front of the elbow, which then leads to a greater collision of the bones on the backside of the elbow. So
Mhm.
for you, you probably had this increased laxity, or because of the partial tear of your UCL, it led to an increased bony collision, whether a more intense collision or more rubbing over time that resulted in this fracture that just kept reoccurring. And
Yeah,
as a result, I totally see why Dr. Shikati looked at this and said, okay, we cannot guarantee that this won't happen again unless we go in there and tighten things up.
yeah.
So I just wanted to address that piece because that is common. It is interesting how a lot of athletes will say like, "Oh, like my elbow hurts," and a coach will say, "Oh, where at?" or a trainer will say, "Where at?" and they say the backside, and people will brush it off like it's no big deal. But
Yeah.
oftentimes that can just be the precursor of something that's going on at the medial elbow. So I think the way that you handled that was probably the right way. I'm glad finally got things taken care of. But now Dylan Newcomer has entered the chat. I'm excited to talk about this chapter of the progression
Yeah.
and just how all of that played out. So you got the MRI again. You said possible stress reaction to the medial epicondyle. You've got
Yeah.
Dylan on your team now, and he's been with you for about 4 or 5 weeks, I would guess, maybe 6 weeks. So what happened next?
So yeah, I talked to the doctor about this and everything. And the reason why I was like a possible stress reaction, not just a for sure like 100%, was because of TJ. So like maybe this will result in you giving another physiological break. Apparently there's like when you get TJ, they like tie it to like that part, and that inflammation that pops up on the MRI, it's very hard to tell if that's from like them drilling your new UCL into that area or if that's actually a new stress reaction apart from surgery. So it's kind of just like doctor's discretion at that point because the MRI
Okay.
can't necessarily tell you 100% one way or the other. The doctor's going to have to kind of give it his or her best guess on if this is new or if this is from surgery. And I talked to two different doctors, the one who gave the MRI in Richmond and the one who was back home in Philly. And both of them said different things. One of them was like, told me it's probably from surgery and you probably just have built up inflammation and just take like 2 weeks off, get back to throwing. And the other one was like, surgery was so long ago at this point that because this is about a year removed from surgery,
Mm.
it's so long from surgery that I don't think it's from surgery. I think this is a new stress reaction. He would recommend like 4 weeks off or something like that. So I had no idea what I was going to do. So I kind of just relied fully on Dylan. I was like, I'm just going to trust what he says. Like he's their driveline guy. I'm just going to fully trust what he says, see what happens. And I think he was almost like kind of in between the two. Kind of forget what he said, but moral of the story is he said that the inflammation or the pain that I was feeling, regardless of if it was a new small stress reaction or if it was from surgery or whatever, like regardless of that, it was from like the lack of strength in my tendons or stiffness in my tendons that was
Okay.
affecting my UCL. That's what he theorized because he was saying more like long story short, your UCL is putting on more stress, is taking on more force than it should right now, and that's why I'm feeling this pain. Or that's why it's a possible stress reaction. That's why I'm built up inflammation, whatever. I also started taking like a steroid pack because he recommended like if I could get a cortisone shot to try to clear up that inflammation before I start throwing again. But cortisone shot like near your UCL is risky, according to the doctor that I talked to. Like
Okay.
they place in the wrong spot could possibly like rupture your UCL again. I was told. Just like I don't feel comfortable giving a cortisone shot, but I'll give you the steroid pack that's like basically like tries to emulate a cortisone shot. So it's like just basically a heavy anti-inflammatory. So I started taking that, and then Dylan had me work with Flex Pro Grip a lot, where he started giving me the test, the thrower's readiness test, and my scores were zeros across the board. I was up to 93 at this point post TJ. And so I put in like 93 as my expected velocity, like top velocity. And I was like, my expected velocity at the time was like 84 or something like that, like really, really bad. And he kind of said that, oh, yeah, this is after I gave those tests, he was like, oh, yeah, this is 100% the issue here. So he was like, basically take 2 to 4 weeks off, something like that. And then like a 4 to 6 week on ramp. So now this is like going to be a 10-week process. And he said the Flex Pro Grip numbers, like even though they might improve in the short term, you're not going to see like the full results of them until like right around 10 weeks is when your tendons are really going to start seeing some serious results or improved strength, improved stiffness. You can explain this part a lot better than me once I get done this, but I started doing all the strength trainings for a while, and when I started throwing right away again, I threw my first bullpen like 4 weeks after or something like that, like at 70 miles an hour. My arm was still killing me, like hurt really bad. So we really slowed down the throwing process to try to give the flex pro grip more time to like really see some serious results, so we slowed it down a lot. And then 10 weeks or 8 weeks down the road or whatever it was, when I was finally starting to ramp up intensity again, that's when I finally felt great, which was very strange. I changed my mechanics a little bit too. I worked with Dylan about this too. I had a really pushy arm action, which is like a common TJ mistake. It's like when you start throwing again and try to guard your elbow, you'll become really pushy. So the only other thing I did as far as trying to get my arm to feel better was try to create this looser arm action that wasn't so pushy. That was hopefully putting my arm in a better position to not feel pain, I guess.
Okay, so I will take over real quickly again and just add some context to what you said there. You are 100% right with your phrasing with strength and stiffness. What happens is no matter what you do training wise, whether it's with Flex Pro Grip for the forearm or anywhere in your body, or what we see as strength gains outpaces stiffness. Stiffness takes about 10 to 12 weeks to really, I guess, become more evident. Or if we were going to do real testing, if we were going to look at the Young's modulus, that's the measure of stiffness of any material, that is going to take longer. So we need to do ultrasound elastography to actually look at the stiffness of a muscle tendon unit. But what the research would say is we can see neuromuscular gains, or what we commonly notice as strength gains, in as little as 4 weeks, if not sooner, right? You can think about the first time you ever picked up a weight in your life. I'm sure that that first summer you dedicated to strength training, when your bench press went from the 45 pounds to all of a sudden you're doing 100, to then you go back to school in the fall and you're bench pressing 200% more than you ever imagined you could bench press. You're all of a sudden benching 180 in a 3 months ago, you couldn't get 65 pounds off your chest. And that stuff can happen fast because you're pretty much creating new neural pathways. You're firing muscle that you already have. You're creating a better ability to fire, for lack of better words, or to trigger an action. Versus stiffness comes when we train at or above 70% of your maximum voluntary contraction. So there's a little bit more science to it, and it requires very specific loading over a certain amount of time under tension, which is why the longer runway is super helpful. So now you think about, in a perfect world, you can include that in your training kind of in an off season to ensure that you get all the benefits from stiffness early on. So then you don't have to chase that at the same time you're also chasing velo. You want the health side of things, or the stiffness side of things, to outpace what you're trying to do on a performance side. You were just in this really difficult position of trying to do both at the same time, which is why you were always on this teeter-totter seesaw, going from a velocity that was comfortable to ticking up a mile per hour or two, and all of a sudden the pain sets in again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like my arm was feeling great up until like I was starting to throw against live hitters. And then that's when it kind of started, when I was increasing my intensity and everything. So yeah, so like I did this 10 weeks. I mean, we didn't like plan it out exactly to be 10 weeks, but we just tried to give it like around 8 to 10 weeks of time of training, like seriously training with the Flex Pro Grip. And then finally 10 weeks later, it was like halfway through the season. At this point, it was like a 2 month period of when my elbow first started hurting me to when I got back in game again. At that point, my elbow was feeling great. And that's when I hit a velo PR, like was up to 95, my first outing back after TJ. And yeah, it ended up working out great. Yeah. I mean, Flex, like Dylan telling me about this, because at this point, like I didn't know about Flex Pro Grip at all, really. Like we have them at Richmond, which is great, but I didn't really know too much about it. So him giving me all like the protocols that he wanted me to do, when to do what, telling me how important it was, and then actually doing it and seeing the results of that was like massive. 100% like went from my arm killing me to not feeling pain at all. Like now I'm throwing 6 days a week. I can throw. I've been times in game where I was like throwing in the midweek on Tuesday, then back in game on Saturday. Now I'm like actually able to like pitch again, and it's like not really too much of a concern about my arm health anymore, which is like super, super cool and fun again.
Right. You no longer feel like you're rehabbing. You actually feel like a pitcher again,
Exactly. Yeah. Can
which
actually
is
work
a
on pitching.
massive step. And I'd love if you could spend some time on that. Even the transition that you've had to go through of years of rehab to feeling like a pitcher again. So we talked about the mental side early on, that freshman to sophomore year, that kind of fatalistic approach, to
Yeah.
then making the jump of like having to clear the mind again and just going out and competing.
Yeah. I think like at first it actually made it easier. I've talked about this with my Epstein a lot, or my pitching coach here. Like my first two outings, I went three up, three down both times, my first two innings, and like was really good. And I think having those injuries and finally being back out there was almost like helpful in the fact that it was like I couldn't care less how I did out there. It's like I'm pitching a game again. Like this is so fun. Like if I suck, I don't care at all. It's like I'm pitching in a game again. I had zero expectations, like was just kind of like I was still competing, obviously, but like more or less was more happy to be there than I was competing. So I think that helped me a ton. And then the harder part was like my third outing. Like I kind of walked some guys, gave up like a bunt single, like kind of just ran into some crap, and my command wasn't fully there. Then it was like that's when I first started thinking about like, okay, like enough of the just happy to be here. Let me try to start figuring stuff out. I think that a very difficult part that I wasn't expecting, which is kind of I'm still going through it a little bit right now, is trying to like figure out how to get through stuff again. Like I thought I had like I thought I had it down like my sophomore year after I went through that tough time and everything, but it just feels like it almost feels like I'm a freshman again with how long it's been since I've pitched, where it's like, oh, I've had some command issues. Like how do I change my mechanics? Do I like just clear it and act like nothing happened? Going through those processes have been like much more difficult than I thought they would be. So
Mm.
that's kind of like the new challenge I'm facing right now. But I think I'm starting to figure it out a little bit. But another hard part about this has been like since I've lost my command a little bit in like a couple outings recently, I'm trying to still work like manage my workload, since I'm like, okay, I can't just get comfortable in the fact that like my arm feels good again finally, where it's like now let me just forget everything and like why I possibly got hurt in the first place to try to fix this. Like I'm still trying to manage that workload while working on stuff. So that's been like another thing that's been on my mind too. But yeah, those are I guess the new challenges that get brought up post surgery and post injury and everything. I feel like I seen
Well,
that a lot last year. It almost helped me a little bit. One of my good friends last year, who's my roommate, came off of TJ and had a lot of struggles too his first year, and had to deal with that a lot. And like a lot of what he was saying was like not feeling comfortable, like not really sure how to get out of it and everything. So I've been talking to him a little bit, but I think that's like fairly common thing that happens to pitchers coming off of TJ and everything like that. So that's the challenge I'm trying to pass over right now, I guess.
no matter what, you're different. You had surgery, you went through all these things, you changed your mechanics, you're moving a new way. So there are going to be new struggles. It's one thing if you've thrown the same way your entire life and never been hurt,
Yeah,
and you have a little hiccup, you can very easily go through the check boxes and figure out what might be off.
right,
Whereas in your situation, it's almost like you have this completely new canvas again that you're trying to figure out how to make the correct adjustment to complete the end result.
right.
Now, there was a little thing in there, a little story that I wanted to add. I don't even know if you've talked about this, but it's a little anecdote I got from talking to Coach Epstein after
Mm.
your first appearance back. He said what I think is really an amazing story from seeing your evolution as an athlete. He said your first pitch, and I don't know if it was the first pitch, but it works for the story. But your first pitch back, you spiked a fastball like
Oh, that was my
56
first
feet.
pitch. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, you're throwing some like low mid 90s fastball into the dirt or into the turf,
yeah.
56 feet. And he said right away he saw you smile. We like laugh, just like
Yeah, I
laugh,
started laughing
chuckle,
afterwards. Yeah. I
toss the
like
glove
my
up.
first one. I got it back and I started cracking up. I was like, oh, It's one way to start off
Yeah.
my first outing, back spiked fastball, nothing like that. I was like, that's just so funny. Especially because like the stuff I'd been through, like command was always the thing that was holding me back or like an issue I've had. So it's like the first pitch back and I spiked a fastball. I was like, oh, that's just of course. Like that's just so funny. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was a fun moment, funny moment. But yeah, it was like he said that to me. It was like a full circle moment because like that's why like I've talked to him. He's like, you need to go back to like where you were when you first like came back for like you're not overanalyzing pitches because now I've gotten this point where like I'm starting to overanalyze a lot of stuff. It's like
From the
hit.
analytics guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm starting to overanalyze. Classic. But yeah, that first pitch I didn't think about it at all. I was like, oh, that's funny. And then I just threw my next pitch and didn't really think too much about it. Like it was just fun to be there. Didn't really think about spiking a fastball too much. Now, or I guess hopefully not anymore. But like, and then there was like a 2 week period where Flash spiked a fastball. I was like, oh, what was I doing? Like, why did that happen? Whatever. Yeah, that was a cool little moment.
Yeah, I loved hearing that. Just hopefully the podcast listeners understand that too, based on the progression you went through of like, oh my God, I spiked this pitch. It's the end of the world. To now you were at a point where you literally just started laughing on the mound. It's
Yeah.
like, well, that's funny. I can't believe that just happened.
Yeah. No, it was a cool kind of a full circle moment.
Didn't you K the side in your first appearance back or a couple
No, so
Ks or
I spiked the first pitch. Second pitch, I just threw it right down the middle, grounded out to first base, and then I struck out the next two guys.
Oh, okay. All right. So not so bad, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't
Yeah.
bad.
So now let's even talk about the progression that you're working through currently, right? You said you are getting a little over analytical with yourself or maybe nitpicking in certain
Yeah.
regards, which we already discussed can happen coming off of surgery or coming off of a long break. That's very common when guys
Yeah.
are working through something new or a new feeling. So what are things that you've now been able to go back to or rely upon that you can find that center again or find a bit of success that you can latch on to?
Yeah. Like you said, I think it's been difficult in the fact that I'm just a totally different pitcher now. So a lot of the things that I did go back to weren't working. So I think that's the part where I was getting like very flustered early on, or when I was first having a little bit of command struggle was like, oh, my old cues that I thought I had like aren't working as well. Also, part of the issue is like, I went from a complete over the top four seam ride guy to like now I'm like almost sidearm, like very low three quarters. Cause that's just like when I said I was like working on fixing my pushy arm action, that was like, oh, this feels super natural and easy. It feels pretty good on my arm. It just felt a lot better for me. Now I'm from throwing like sinkers. So if I'm missing arm side a lot, which I was for a period of time, like my old cue was just like, oh, I'll just move my sights over to the left side and let it come back. If I'm missing arm side, simple solutions, move over a little bit, let it run off, whatever. And then whenever I did that, I was starting to like yank the sinker instead of having a slight adjustment. So that part was very difficult. The thing that I think I have been able to keep with me is the mental side of the game. I think has carried with me to a certain degree. One, trying to like find the silver lining in the process again has been really helpful for me. My last two outings weren't great, but I was able to do things a lot better. So that's been helpful is like not losing my confidence just because my first two outings were perfect. And then my last two outings weren't great, but they were a lot better than like walking two guys. So that part has been good to like find achievement in process and not necessarily results. And then two is not necessarily overthinking too much. Like I said, I've been relatively analytical and trying to fix mistakes right away, but I wasn't worried about like mechanics at all. I was trying to trust the fact that my mechanics were good enough as they were, and they've taken me this far, so not to worry about them. So those are some of the things that held constant and have helped me a little bit and getting back into like a competing mindset, I guess. But like I said, I think my mechanics are so different that like some of my old cues, and since I pitched so long ago, that some of my old cues aren't necessarily helpful for me right now. So I think that was the challenging part. Now I think I'm finally starting to find new cues that are starting to work for me a little bit. Like I said, I think the most important part for me to learn is I'm not the same pitcher that I was before. I'm not going to try to use the same exact cues. I might have to tweak them a little bit or see what works best for me now, and not to just assume that I'm the same pitcher as I was before. That understanding has been more helpful for me than anything else at this point.
Well, Josh, I'm sorry to make you do this, and it's probably crappy podcasting on my side, but we've gone through such an amazing evolution of yours that I'm just now realizing that we completely skipped over the actual TJ rehab. We don't need to go crazy on it, but with that being such a big part of this podcast, I definitely want to take a little bit of time where you actually talk through, I guess, that chapter that we missed, the actual
Yeah.
surgery, to then when you sought out Dylan Newcomer back in November or December.
I'll start from even before surgery. Like I was working with a strength coach from back home, and I was kind of talking him through it and like see what he thought from like a strength standpoint or whatever. So right away, it was very important for me to like keep doing arm care and lifting a lot, even leading up to surgery. Because at first I like this is why I touched on I'm like, is it even like worth it? Like, is it even gonna do anything for me? Like, should I keep doing these workouts and doing these arm cares? I'm just gonna have to take time off afterwards anyway. And he was like, oh no, like this is like incredibly important to keep doing all of this strength training, all of your arm care still, even though you're about to get surgery. So that was important right away. That was the first, I guess, part of it. And then after surgery is like you can't sweat for a while. So like that part was hard because as soon as you get surgery, or at least me, you want to do stuff right away. Like you got in this mindset of like, I'm gonna come back better or whatever. Like it's almost inspirational in a way of like, this is a new chapter for me. I'm gonna take it head on. It's very difficult in the beginning to find this little stuff to do that's still important, but it's not gonna like make you sweat because you have the stitches in, or it's not gonna mess up your arms. Also, I got the TJ out of my knee, which I guess could be
Ah,
important because that was part of my rehab. A lot of people get it out of their wrist now, I think.
yeah, the palmaris longus tendon, which not everybody has, or it's too small for some people.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you had the gracilis hamstring tendon pulled out of the
Yeah.
back of your
So
legs.
Sakati was, since it's not good for everybody, since it's like could be short or not thick enough or whatever, he was like, I just take it out of everybody's knee or the hamstring tendon. That's consistent for everybody. That works every time. So that's where I got it out. So like a lot of my rehab in the beginning was like hip strengthening exercises to try to protect that hamstring since I couldn't do anything upper body wise. So that was like the first portion of my rehab. I don't know if you've heard this from people before, but like the knee and the hamstring up until I started throwing again was like way more difficult for me than my arm, which was incredibly annoying. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh yeah, take like whatever, it's gonna be fine. But that would like prove to be quite the challenge in the first couple months or whatever. So that was the first portion of it. And then as soon as you get out of your cast, you kind of start working on range of motion. I'm pretty sure like pretty much right away after that or pretty soon after. So a lot of my rehab at that point was just my trainer like kind of bringing me through different ranges of motions. I would do it on my own as far as I could back and forth. And then she would also do, I don't know, manual passive. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Motion. So I would do it on my own, and then she would kind of try to push it a little bit up until the end ranges. So that was like one of the first steps is to try to get that back. I think there was even a period of time to and scar rubbing, whatever that.
Right, yeah, you're just trying to prevent buildup of additional scar tissue, basically.
Yeah. So that was part of it as well. I think there was a period in time too where it was like the range of motion wasn't great right away, and there was something you could do where it's like you get dry needled, like right around your scar. And I think that's supposed to free you up a little bit. So I did that at one point, but got the range of motion back. That was fine. And then you kind of start right away with just like wrist curls. Because I think like the forearm, as we've talked about, is like a very big part of it. So you start with like 1 pound and then you start trying to work your way up. You start doing assisted push-ups against the wall and then work your way up. Very standard like shoulder rehab stuff, but I found that easier and more standard than all the other stuff you have to do. It's
Shout
like,
out to your coach on the front end telling you to keep doing everything that you were doing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that I think that was a big help because my it didn't feel like as weak as I thought it would. I felt like My strength came back a lot sooner than I thought it would. Another thing I did that I kind of forgot about too is my arm was still like in a cast. I would do a lot of opposite side training.
Yes.
So even though like I wasn't able to sweat, I would try to like keep it at a moderately low workload. But I would be doing like one arm benches, one arm rows a lot, stuff like that, one arm curls, all on my left side. And apparently, like I said, you can talk more about this if you want because you know more. But apparently, it's supposed to carry over to your right side if you train your left side. So I did
Yes.
that for a while too. In the beginning, when I couldn't train my right side at all, I would kind of grind on my left side of my upper body. But yeah, so I think that was like some of the more niche parts of my training that happened right away. I think a lot of it too was like just like mobility stuff. I think like my shoulders ended up getting pretty tight. Honestly, this sounds a little crazy, but when your arm is in the cast for this long, I felt like my shoulder was very tight afterwards from like kind of holding it around like that. So I did a lot of like shoulder mobility exercises like pretty early on in my rehab process. So yeah, a bunch of stuff like that. Another thing that was like kind of interesting was like the pull-up progression.
Okay.
Um, I try to do research on this and it was like difficult for me to navigate through it. But a challenging part was I would be able to do like pretty heavy rows or like a pretty heavy bench press at this point, but like pull-ups still felt really weird. I try to start off by just like doing long holds on the pull-up bar, like dead hangs pretty much, and then start doing eccentric pull-ups. So like I did like dead hangs for like a 2 week period, and then I might do like eccentric pull-ups for like a 2 week period, and then I would start doing actual pull-ups. So that was another part that was like kind of hard. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I can remember that was niche or challenging. I also pulled
Very
my hamstring.
intuitive, the way you handled the pull-ups. I mean, that's handled perfectly as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I was still working with a strength coach from back home that was helping me through it. Like I don't know, I trusted him 100%, but like for me it was like, oh, this feels really weird. Like I didn't know, it's like a mental block almost of that.
Mm.
But yeah, another weird part was my hamstring like pulled really bad twice from my knee, the part the tendon they took out from my knee. So like the sprint progression was also kind of challenging. I think it felt fine. I kind of popped right into it too soon. It was like, oh, you can sprint on this day. I was like, oh, cool. Like I'll sprint. And my hamstring like bruised, like pulled and bruised up a lot. And I was like, great. Like
Classic.
versus hamstring back to health too. Awesome. Training lower body was also very helpful with like using a safety squat bar. Is
Mm.
like, the only other thing I'll say. Like I was able to do that like pretty quickly. Pretty much as soon as I got out of the cast, you can't really like hold on with the brace, I don't think, or wasn't supposed to, but like
Or
I
at least no elbow valgus
yeah, like
loading
I
like a
didn't do
behind.
back
Yeah.
squat or I didn't do front squat, so like having the safety squat bar was like super helpful because I was able to still train my legs pretty heavy with the safety squat bar. So that part was pretty helpful as well.
Which is massive. I think that gets missed way too often in rehabs, where often athletes will be instructed to load later in the process as opposed to doing what they can to become a quote unquote normal person or normal athlete as soon as possible. Yes, you might not be able to load your operated right arm like crazy early on, but you nailed it with the left arm, so you tapped into the cross education principle. And then by hitting your legs like crazy, not only did it probably help with the hamstring rehab you needed to go through, but it made becoming an athlete again significantly easier. And with the detraining effects that we see with power, with strength, with all of that, you were able to mitigate those effects by getting back in the gym as soon as possible.
Yeah, for sure.
And then last question, maybe on the rehab for you. Prior to the hiccup that you had in that winter period this past year, how
Mhm.
was the throwing progression?
The throwing progression, I thought the most challenging part, overall, it was good. The annoying part is like right away, like your arm still feels terrible. At least mine did. Maybe other are better than mine. But I've talked to other kids on our team who've had TJ before too, though, and they've all said the same thing. So I think I'm not alone in this. It's like the first like week of throwing, my arm felt okay. It just felt weird. Really, pretty much after that, for a month period, it was like my arm was like didn't like hurt, but like it was like, oh, like this feels not great at all. It's
Mm.
like not comfortable at all, like little nicks and pains here and there. Just didn't feel great. So that part was kind of challenging. And I try to hop on like meloxicam, like these anti-inflammatories, or try to like deload like my I did the Reynolds throwing program.
Mike Reinold.
Yeah, Reynolds.
Yeah.
Yeah. So his one was supposed to be a little bit better with like planning out your deload weeks, allegedly. I think that's the part that's different with his and some of the other ones. But I started like moving my deload weeks around a little bit, and maybe I think I took one extra deload week than was on the program. Because I think early on, at least from what I was told and what I did, you don't want to like push anything at all. Like if your arm is hurting, you're not really supposed to throw through it. So I ended up moving deload weeks up. I think I added one here, like added one over the course of time. So that part was really tough to navigate in the beginning, I think, especially when your arm's not probably not going to feel great. It's like
Mm.
knowing when to schedule your deload weeks. And then the other challenging part for the throwing program was the intensity progression. At this point, actually, I was working with Dylan. It was towards the end of the fall, so he helped me out a lot with this, and I think it ended up working out well. In most TJ programs, at least the ones that I've seen, a lot of the times it's 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks at a specific intensity level. So they'll give you like your first 2 or 3 bullpens will be at like 50%, and then your next like 5 bullpens will be at like 70%. And that's like very hard, I think, at least for me. It was like, what velocity is that? Because it's not like 70% of it, at least what they say is like, it's not 70% of your max velo, it's 70% intensity. Those two things are different. I had no idea how hard I was supposed to be throwing and stuff like that. That part was like super hard. So I started working with Dylan at this point. I think that's why I actually did was like, I have no idea what to do as far as velocity progression. I'm
Right. You just lost. You
yeah.
need objectivity
And I
somewhere.
and I started trying to do some research on it, but like on my own, it was like too difficult. I thought I could figure it out, but I was like, I'm not seeing enough online to feel confident in it. So I started working with him, and his big thing was never increasing your velocity more than like 3 miles an hour over the course of a week. So even though my 1 week stretch might go from 50% to 70%, he was like, don't just add 20% because you're supposed to. So like if I had 1 week at 50%, or I'll start at 70%, that might be like 70 miles an hour for me. So I'll say like 70 miles an hour for that whole week. And then even if the next week was supposed to be at 70%, I would increase it to like 72 or 73 or something like that. And then if the next week was at 90%, I wouldn't all of a sudden add like 7 miles an hour. I would just every single week I would just try to add right around 2 miles an hour. So normally throw 2 bullpens a week. Those 2 bullpens I would stay at the same velocity level. And then the next week I would just try to add 2 miles an hour
Hmm.
up until I got up to like my max velocity. I think that was by far the hardest thing for me. But like I said, Dylan helped me out a lot with that. And I think my arm actually felt pretty good doing that. Like those velocity increases felt a lot more manageable.
Yeah, it's so weird how so many places in life it makes complete sense to do very small progressive overloads, but for whatever reason, for years, return to throw programs will just slap a 20% increase on
Yeah.
someone. Be like, oh, you'll be fine. But
Yeah.
you would never do that anywhere. Thinking about that, an athlete who weighs 200 pounds, imagine telling them, okay, well, next week we need you at 40 pounds.
Yeah.
That's a 20% increase. That's insane. Imagine if we just slapped a 40-pound weighted vest on you and say, this is how much you weigh now. We
Yeah.
don't do that with anything else. And asking an athlete to do that, especially a rehabbing athlete, is absolutely insane.
Yeah. That was like that was where I was at too. I was like, I remember for the first time when I was throwing like 70, I was like, that felt kind of hard. And then the next week I was supposed to be up to like 77. That feels insane to me. I just wasn't able to do it. So that's when like I reached out to him and I was like, yeah, it makes way more sense. And then there's like
Yes.
part of it's like a pull down progression too. Like there's like a little weak stretch where you're doing like flat grounds or light pull downs or something like that, compression throws. So doing it over those courses of times too, like I was at a point where I was veloing every throw I made during like every single day, every single throw I made, it was veloed. So my late days, it would want to keep it under a certain amount. On my compression days, I would want to try to hit this velocity. And then on my bullpen days, obviously, same thing, want to try to hit a velocity or not go too far, not go too low. So I was at a point where I was veloing every single throw I made, which helped out a lot too, keeping my late days late and whatnot.
Exactly. It's amazing what objective feedback can actually do. When you
Yeah.
have data, I'm sure this helped you with your analytical mind as well, where you're like, oh, finally, I have something hard to go
Oh,
off of. I
yeah.
have some real evidence, not just like, oh, well, how do you feel today?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know because I could feel great, but the radar gun could tell me I'm throwing 62 miles an hour, and that means I'm in a really shitty spot.
Yeah. Or other times where it's like I felt great and I would try to keep it at a certain level. And I was like, I don't know if that was too hard or not. You don't, like I said, like not going too hard is like a very important part of it too. So I was like just lost throwing. I was like, I never knew how hard to throw, how hard I was throwing, like all that stuff. So yeah, I just put up like a little tripod and a pocket radar behind me and every single throw was monitored. I loved it. I was actually rehabbing with another kid on my team, same surgery right around the same timeline. Like his was like 2 weeks after me. And I had the velo on him too. And he was like, oh my God, like I can't believe I wasn't doing this before. And it was like, this has been so helpful. So I mean, that part was pretty awesome. That part was very,
And this is why we needed to actually talk about the rehab
yeah,
process.
I
This
forgot
is
about
this is
all
why I needed to real things back in for a
yeah,
minute.
for sure. I forgot about a lot of that.
Well, there was just so much to cover. I do
Yeah.
appreciate you running that back a little bit. Now
Cool.
we will fast forward to where we're at with the season now. So at the time of this recording, you guys have a couple weeks left. Obviously, the Spiders started off crazy hot, hit a little bit of a skid. Hopefully, we still get this out before the season completes. So, what are we thinking? I know early on, I was hoping Spiders to Omaha. A lot of things still have to go right now at this
Yeah.
point for a postseason berth. So where's your head at? Where are we at with the team? Just let me have it. Shoot me
Yeah.
straight.
This is actually, it's been like the craziest season I've been a part of. So like we started out, I think it was like 20-2, something like that, something crazy. And at that point, we had beaten UVA, we had beat Boston College, we've beaten NC State, swept our first weekend of conference, like went on like a 15 game win streak, could not be hotter as a team, like could not be feeling better about ourselves. Like it was just we have like a couple studs in our team that were just like playing super well. Scouts were coming to games. Like everybody's just could not be feeling better. And then we lost a weekend series to St. Joe's. And I think it hit a little harder even than it should have because at that point, like I said, we had beaten three ranked team or two ranked teams at this point, like had such a good record that we were like, oh my God, if we sweep St. Joe's, like we could actually get ranked. We were like right outside the ranking. And that was before we beat UVA. So if we were like, oh, now we beat UVA, we were like, if we sweep St. Joe's, we're ranked. And then we lost 2 out of 3, and we're like, oh, it just really, I think, hit hard because of how hot we were and all these expectations. Oh, we're going to get ranked. We could get an at-large bid. We might not even have to win our conference at this point. And then we lost 2 out of 3, and we're like, oh, that like kind of ruins everything. Even though it's just like one weekend in conference that we lost, we were like, oh, that ruins all of our plans. So like I think that killed us. And then for the next like 3 weeks, like if we pitched well, the hitters didn't hit well. If the hitters hit well, the pitchers didn't pitch well. We were pressing. It wasn't even like the players themselves were playing bad. It was just like as a collective, we couldn't figure out a way to win games. So that was just crazy. But now we're at this point, fast forward, where it's like we're not even supposed to make the conference tournament as of now. We're like 2 games back for the 7th seed, and the 7th seed's the last seed with 2 weeks to go. But we found a way to give ourselves a chance still, even though we've largely been pretty bad in conference. But we've given ourselves a chance. At this point, I'm almost optimistic still because I think the biggest problem is we were pressing so much because we had all these crazy expectations for ourselves. Well, since all of that's out the window at this point, I feel like we're finally back to like just playing like loose and like playing free. So I think we've been playing a lot better recently. And if we make the tournament, then all of a sudden I think like it's right in front of us. We're clearly a good team. We can just find a way to make the tournament. I feel pretty good about things. But the expectation piece is always messing things up. So I think that messed us up as a team a little bit too. I feel
I think that might be the reoccurring theme of this podcast. Expectations need to come with a grain of salt at times.
yeah, expectations will kill you, apparently. Just happen over and over again. At some point I'm gonna have to learn or we're gonna have to learn.
Right. Well, I mean, we've been at this for a while, and it's been an awesome conversation. Of course, it's been amazing to reconnect. Is there anything else that you think would be awesome to leave the audience with, whether it's a word of advice or maybe just something that you hope to accomplish here in the next year? Not that we just hated on expectations or anything.
No, I mean I won't say anything I hope to accomplish. I don't know. Use flex progress.
I'll take that. Never gonna
Uh,
hate on that.
yeah, I don't know. I would just say have fun with it. You never know when the game will be taken away. I mean, I'm having so much fun now, and I never, I always took baseball for granted. I'm a fifth year, careers could be coming to an end. One and two, I had it taken away for 3 years, and now it's like I'm not going to beat myself up over a bad outing. I'm just having fun. So I think that's like the biggest thing I would say to guys nowadays. It's just have fun with it. Never know. Never know when it's going to come to an end. And when it does come to an end, you're going to be punching yourself for being sad after a bad game. I promise. That's all I really got, I think.
I think that's the perfect place to cap this off. I really appreciate your time today, Josh. Looking forward to watching you guys finish strong and hopefully get a bid here. It's been amazing to work with you guys, and of course, seeing what you've been able to endure and now accomplish has been incredible. So, thanks again to you, Josh, and to all the listeners out there. Thanks for laying back with us.